Hey everybody, welcome to Lesson 5 of Unit 4 on vertebrates. In this lesson we're going to talk all about the class Aves, which are our birds. Alright, so we've already established that this is class Aves. Alright, we're still kingdom Animalia, we are still phylum Chordata, we are still subphylum Vertebrata, and this class that we are talking about is Aves, or birds. Okay? Now the major advancements and ones you really should know. First and foremost, they are the very first endotherms. There are only two classes of vertebrates that are endotherms, which means they can regulate their body temperature. Regulate body temp. And beyond the aves, we also have mammals. Okay? We'll talk more about mammals later. Right now it's all about the birds. And just know they are the first endotherms. They have hollow bones, which helps them become very light, which means they get to fly. They also have a skin modification, otherwise known as feathers. These feathers are made of keratin. And we finally see the appearance of a true four-chambered heart. That's right, 4. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. Guess who else has a four-chambered heart? Hope you guessed us, because you'd be right. Again, another thing that all aves, birds, and mammals have in common are these four-chambered hearts. Okay? Allows for a highly advanced respiratory system. Now, this four-chambered heart is highly efficient at delivering oxygenated blood to the body. We don't have the mixing of some oxygenated and some deoxygenated blood like we see in reptiles and more so in amphibians. So we have this new four-chambered heart which allows us to get all this extra oxygenated blood, which allows us to create all this extra energy to our body. Now birds don't really use it for their vast intelligence that they could have. We did. Mammals chose the intelligence route. Birds decided to develop flight. Now, you can argue who got the better deal there. Birds get to fly, we get to think. And then I guess you could say, well, our thinking allowed us to create airplanes, which sort of kind of makes us fly, but we still crash from those. Just saying. So, the four-chambered heart allows for a lot more oxygenated blood to go to the body. Oxygen is the key to creating energy for the body. So all that extra oxygen allows us to fly, okay? Now I've said that 4 times now on this video. Do you think you should write that down? Maybe if you didn't pay attention the first 4 times, you should pause the video, go back, listen this time, and pay attention. I'm pretty sure you're going to see that in the future. Now bird brains. We see a much larger cerebral area, that is this area here, compared to our human brain. So you can see here we have our cerebellum. Here in the bird brain we have our cerebellum. A lot of lines here. Let me get rid of some of those. So that's our cerebellum. Okay, the cerebral part is the purpley green part. Now our old classic view of this was that this pink purpley area in here was not a thinking portion of the brain. However, new studies, new technologies have shown or revealed that in reality, this green portion of the brain actually is about thinking, just like this green portion of our brain is about thinking. All right, so the birds do have a very large area of their brain dedicated to thinking, so they can solve some problems. They do have a speech center, not just some guttural sounds like your bird or your bears and your alligators would. Okay, these guys can actually have talks, and they do have all 5 senses that mammals do. Now, one of the coolest adaptations to a bird is obviously their feathers, which helps allow them to do a ton of stuff, one of which is flying, which is the most commonly known. But not only do they have 14 types of feathers, but those feathers all have really cool and different jobs. Now, the feather is uniquely constructed. You can see that they have this cross hook, and they hook together to catch air and stay waterproof. Now if you zoom in on this area of the feather, you can see we have the rachis, and then we have barbs, and we have barbicels, which sort of hook onto the barbs, which allow for this lattice structure. So it's a lattice structure to the feather, okay? Gives us strength, but you can see there's air in between or little gaps in between, saves on weight. Again, birds are specifically designed and specifically adapted for flight in the most cases. There are a few types of birds like penguins and ostriches and emus that don't fly, but for the most part, we are adapted for flight here. So why feathers? What do they do for us? They give us flight. Check. They help us attract mates, like in peacocks, where they get this big plumage of highly colorful feathers, and it says, hey, I'm available. Look at my cool feathers, okay? And they use it to attract a mate. Temperature control. They can either heat themselves or keep themselves cool, depending on how they display their wings and display their feathers, okay? In Florida heat, you'll see a lot of times birds will actually stretch out their wings, and that will allow air to capture through it, and that will actually keep their bodies cool. They can be used for swimming and diving. Again, these would be birds like penguins, as just one of many examples. They can provide protection from wind, sun, and moisture. They can provide camouflage, and yes, they can even help with digestion. Now, in this case, digestion, they actually take some of their feathers and they consume it, and that helps break up some of the tougher nuts or seeds in with their crop and gizzard, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. So flight. What requirements do we have for flight? One, we have to have hollow bones for flight. Not all birds have them, but for the most part they do. Again, some exceptions would be penguins and emus and ostriches. And these flightless birds are too heavy because they don't have these hollow bones. Feathers and wings are a good little key there. You can see we have feathers and wings. Modified lungs to allow extra air sacs, and lots of energy, which we get all this energy from all that extra O2 that is now delivered from our four-chambered heart. Okay, that's the 5th time I've said it now, okay? Please learn that. Four-chambered heart allows for more oxygen to the body, which gives us a ton of energy, which allows for flight. There's 6 times. So where does all this energy come from? We talked about that ad nauseum, and now for the love and how exactly do birds fly. Please pay special close attention to this video. You will see questions about lift, okay? So pay close attention to the lift portion.
How do birds fly? Well, it mostly has to do with the shape of their wings and how they move them. When a bird flies, it flies through the air, and the air flows over and under the wing. If we look at a section of a bird's wing from the side, we see that it is big up front and then tapers off toward the back, kind of like an airplane wing. When talking about flying, this shape is called an airfoil. Now the air flows around the wing like water in a river. If you've ever been on a river, you'll notice that it moves very slow at the wide parts, but speeds up really fast when the river narrows. This is because the same amount of water that was in the wide parts now has to move through a much smaller space at the narrow parts. And so the air is just like several rivers flowing side by side past the bird's wing. The shape of the wing, the airfoil, makes it so the river of the air that flows over the top of the wing gets squeezed and narrowed. And just like a river, this air has to speed up. And the river of air that flows under the wing actually widens and slows down a little. Now imagine you are traveling down this river of air and you have a cannon on your boat. The airfoil is an island and you are trying to shoot it with your cannon. But you have to reload the cannon every time you fire, so you can only shoot it once every few minutes. If you are going really fast down the river, you will only have time to shoot a few cannonballs at the island. But if you go down the wider part of the river at a much slower pace, you will be able to hit the island with more cannonballs. This is kind of what happens with a bird's wing, but instead of cannonballs, it's the air that's landing on the wing. Because the air on top is pushing less on the wing than the air on the bottom, the wing gets moved upward. This upward push is called lift, and it's the main reason birds are able to fly. But there are other tricks birds use too. To get more air to pass over their wings, birds will flap them, especially when taking off. When they do, they rotate their wings forward and down and then lift them back up to start over again. Rotating the wing forward causes the lift from the air to push the bird not only in an upward direction, but forward as well. This forward push is called thrust. As you can imagine, all this flapping takes a lot of energy, and so birds have large lungs to help them breathe and strong muscles to move their wings. Not only that, but their body is shaped to cut through the air efficiently, and their bones are hollow, which makes them very lightweight to begin with. So a bird relies on many tools to get through the air, not just its wings. As for people, we are heavy and can't produce the energy needed to fly by ourselves, so we use aircraft to get through the air. And even though we use machines to get off the ground, it's still fun to imagine that we can fly like the birds.
All right, so that is flight. So make sure, please pay attention to the pressure differences on top of and below the wing, meaning there is more pressure underneath the wing, pushing the wing and the bird upwards, okay, than there is on top of the wing. And finally, let's take a special close look at our four-chambered heart. Four-chambered heart is called, sorry about that. Four-chambered heart, hold on, there we go, is broken up into, you guessed it, four chambers. We have the left atrium, that is this guy over here. Now you'll see that the left atrium is from the bird's point of view. So we would be looking at inside the belly. So if we were to lay the bird on its back and cut it open, and then so your heart would be on the left side of the bird. For us, it's just opposite. It's like the mirror image. So left atrium would be on our right side looking at it. So we have right atrium, and then we have a left ventricle, and then the right ventricle, separated by septum, except it's a full and complete septum. Yay! So that is the four-chambered heart, same as mammals, and is the most efficient oxygen delivery system that is required for flights. Let's take a real quick comparison of our hearts, okay? In this group of animals, vertebrates, we have a two-chambered heart. So two-chambered equals fish. Okay, hopefully that'll remember you. This guy has three chambers, 1, 2, and 3, but I don't see a wall here. So I'm missing a wall and I have three chambers. So I'm missing the septum, but I'm three chambers. This is going to be amphibians. If there was a septum here in this area, whoops, where am I going? There was a septum coming out from this part of the ventricle going up about halfway, right about this, then I would be a reptile, okay? But I don't have that, so I am an amphibian. And then finally, I have a four-chambered heart, so left atrium, left ventricle, right ventricle, which means I am either a bird or a mammal. And those are a review of your hearts. And this is just showing a lot of the specialized air sacs that are present in all birds that help them not only have enough oxygen during the huge amount of energy that is used for flight, but also to reduce the amount of weight or mass of the bird to help, again, aid in flight. And we have specialized structures inside all birds. We have modified interior air sacs. We've shown those. That are these guys. We have a crop and gizzard, okay? And a crop and gizzard is over here. We have a crop and gizzard, and this is used for digestion. Now, if I'm spending time writing out in horrible handwriting on this little electronical pad, do you think it would be important for you to take down? And the answer would be yes. The crop and gizzard are used for digestion. They'll actually eat little stones, and they'll take some feathers and they'll stick them in there. And that stone and feathers helps break up the seeds that these birds eat, especially chickens. And then we have the bursa fabricus, and this you definitely want to know. Here is the bursa fabricus, and the bursa fabricus makes blood in the body because they have no bone marrow. Now you, as a human, have full solid bones. You do not have hollow bones, which means the marrow filling in the gaps, what would be the hollow part of your skeleton, makes your red blood cells. Okay? Birds don't have that because bird bones are hollow for the most part, which means they have no marrow, which means they can't make red blood cells through their marrow. So they do that via this bursa fabricus. So please make sure you know what a bursa fabricus is, that it makes red blood cells for birds. Okay? And then the feathers must molt. Similar to your reptiles, they have to shed their skin. Birds have to molt their feathers. And we get into our Geek of the Week, Thomas Henry Huxley. So Huxley was affectionately known, or unaffectionately known, as Darwin's bulldog. Yes, that is the Charles Darwin. He was a very, very fierce advocate of evolution, and this is really the key component to Huxley. He was the first proponent of the theory of reptile avian evolution. Okay? And this is a quote directly from Huxley in 1862. Birds were so essentially similar to reptiles in all the most essential features of their organization that these animals may be said to be merely an extremely modified and aberrant reptilian type. So what Huxley is saying here is he says that birds and reptiles are so closely together they might as well be called one group of animals. Okay? Now, currently, modern science still separates them into two different classes, which is why we teach you as two separate different classes instead of different orders. Just like, remember in the reptile section, I showed you 4 separate orders of reptiles. Some scientists believe we should have 5 orders of reptiles, and one of those should be aves. Okay? But so far, currently, they are a completely separate class. Now, we didn't have much evidence from Huxley's claim in 1862 all the way up until 1996. Up until then, it was really just a theory based off of Huxley's observations. But in 1996, archaeologists discovered the first fossilized Archaeopteryx in the mud. Okay? That is this guy here. Now, this laid so much proof for Huxley's theory that now there actually is a debate, which you guys will be taking part of here momentarily. All right? So this is clearly a dinosaur, right? Except we have the feathers preserved. We have feathers here, here, and here. So this is an artist's rendition of what the Archaeopteryx could very well have looked like. Now this is an ancient bird that lived amongst the dinosaurs. He looks kind of just like a dinosaur, yet he has feathers. So it very well could be the fact that dinosaurs, some of them, evolved into birds. And let's look at, from this cladogram here, and this is a modified cladogram showing a pure reptile, a pure bird, and where the Archaeopteryx lands on the adaptation tree. So, Archaeopteryx, hinge-like ankle, legs directly underneath the body, bipedal gait, bipedal 2 legs. A long index finger, check. Hollow bones, ooh. A furcula, a wishbone, 3-fingered hand, had feathers, had an enlarged sternum, so that's right here. A backwards pointing pubis, he could fly. Okay, so these are all things that Archaeopteryx and birds have that true reptiles do not. Now the Archaeopteryx is missing a pygostyle, which is a vertebrate ending. He has no claws on their wings. Okay, so you can see that this bird does not have claws anywhere on their wings, whereas Archaeopteryx did. This bird has a keeled sternum or breastbone and a toothless beak. So this beak kind of loses its teeth. Archaeopteryx still had some teeth. So there is still some evolving or adapting that modern birds have done. But remember, Archaeopteryx lived hundreds of millions of years ago. Okay, birds are living right now. Now, I believe, let me double check. This is our last slide, and this leads us to the great dino debate. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the class, and I will talk to you soon. Bye now.